Hi, this is Dolores Jensen, and I want to talk to you about watercolor painting class. It's from 12:30 to 2 p.m. on Thursdays, and it's for grades 7 through 12. Obviously, it's a class to paint with watercolor paint. This is a different watercolor paint than you probably used when you were younger. Those were the little hard cakes that you got wet and they created beautiful paint. We're going to use another type of watercolor. Comes in these tubes. You do not have to have a set this large. This is a 24 color set that I purchased from Amazon. It was not very expensive. The name brand isn't terribly important. You could have a set of 12 and that would be sufficient because watercolor paint mixes very well, which I'm going to demonstrate in just a moment. So these paints come in tubes. You use very little, so don't let the tiny tube fool you. This will last you more than the full year. I'm just going to put a little on the paper, but that's not how we'll be painting, but I want to show you what the colors do. So that's the kind of paints you're going to get. So I'm going to move those aside. You also will need some brushes. I have some samples here. These are all a very soft brush, and you'll need a variety of brushes, small, large. You don't, again, have to have all of these. This is a set I purchased at Hobby Lobby. It's not even the right brushes in here anymore, but I got it at Hobby Lobby for $6.99 at least 10 years ago. I believe they still sell these, or you might be able to find it online, but this was a really good set. It had a variety of brushes. It has a styrofoam core with holes, so you can turn this upside down and the brushes don't fall out. This will protect your brushes from transporting them to and from class, because these are soft brushes, and if you put them in a pencil case all jumbled together, you will ruin them. They will start to bend and they will permanently bend, and you will ruin your brushes. You need to take good care of them. This lid screws off. Now you could make something maybe out of a Pringles can that does the same purpose, or something else you have at home. So you need a way to protect your brushes while you're transporting them to class. You will need something to put your paints in. I have a lot of old paints and I have them in this little bin, and it has a nice lid to it. The lid doesn't snap, so if I took this to class I'd have to rubber band it shut or something, but I can use the lid in this case as my paint palette. You can use a plate, a plastic plate, and bring it to class. I want you to bring something to use as a paint palette because these paints dry and can be re-wet. So I don't want to give you a plate and then you throw it away, because you can reuse these very easily. So I'm going to show you that now. Watercolors, I painted this on here with pretty much the straight watercolor. But if I went ahead and got this all wet, it will wet again. And those colors, see how that blob I put in, see the intensity of that color? Aren't they beautiful? So they mix. Basically what we're learning in this class is how to get the pigment to suspend in the water, and then we manipulate it. And some of it is trial and error. You learn what the paints will do. Others is you have a little more control. I can get this wet and then introduce a bit of color. So I have some paint on here from a little while ago. And if I just introduce some color, look how that runs through there. Now what if I added a little more of another color and let that run through? You can come up with some really beautiful things. So that's letting it be in a big puddle of water. You could also do it on an area that's dry, and you can control that color a little better. So you can definitely control it, or you can let it be loose. So there's a lot of different styles of watercolor painting. And let me show you this. This is some paint that's been on here for a year. All I got to do is get it wet, kind of let it soak, and there I have paint again. So they're pretty versatile. So you're going to need some good brushes. You're going to need the paints. You're also going to need watercolor paper. And I'd like you to get a decent size. It's written in the catalog description what you need to get. This is a good example. This is a 9x12. It's cold press finish, which means it's already been pressed and it's nice and flat. In this particular pad, it originally was all glued together, so it was all stretched flat and it wouldn't warp while you were working. Sometimes we may need to tape it down to a board. So we'll work with that as the weeks progress. So this is an example. It doesn't have to be this brand. Master's Touch also makes a pretty decent watercolor pad. Obviously you're going to need a bigger one than this. So those are the supplies you need. I also have a cloth that I dab my brush on if I don't want it too wet. You can also pick up water if you want an area to not have so much water. So there's a lot of things you can do. I really enjoy watercolor. Some people get frustrated because they feel like they can't control it, but it's kind of a relaxing painting. It can be intense where you use the paint full force, or it can be very soft and flowy. You can already see how this is drying with some really interesting blending of these colors. You can see how I introduced a drop of water there and it forced the pigment. So basically the pigment is floating in the water and we're going to try to control how that pigment flows. So I hope you might find this interesting. If you have any questions, just contact me and I'll answer them the best I can. And I hope to see you in class this fall.